However you are and whenever you are, welcome good souls of the planet and beyond to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portholes and tantalizing turnoffs. Joining me tonight is a very, very special guest. One I am very thankful who, in effect, has jumped in last minute as Angela Shear, our originally scheduled guest, could not make it this week. So Debbie Jordan-Kauble. Now, you may be more familiar with her from the Bud Hopkins best-selling book, Intruders, The Incredible Visitations of Copley Woods. The pseudonym of Kathy Davis was, in fact, Debbie, who will be joining us tonight. So those of you fellow 90s children who grew up watching that series, I'm sure, just like me, it stuck with you. And I'll have to ask Debbie when she comes on in just a bit. I can't find this movie. I would love to get it on Blu-ray, streaming somehow. And I'm sure that I assume that there may be some inaccuracies that were embellished upon based on the true story. But still, these movies do have cultural impacts. And tonight, I think that Debbie's story will have an impact on you as far as her abduction experience, alien hybridization, as well as, and I'm really excited about this as well, because of the season, some EVPs that Debbie has been a part of capturing that, unlike what you normally hear on television, are actually quite clear. It's just perfect for the season. So we'll have Debbie on in just a moment. As a friendly reminder, the call-in lines tonight will be open in the last 30 minutes. The Paranormal Radio app line is 855-472-5483. So please call in, share your thoughts and experiences with us, and ask your questions. If you have a question for Debbie, that's your chance in those last 30 minutes. So again, the Paranormal Radio app line is 855-472-5483 or 85-KGRA live. And those of you who are KGRA followers, you may be familiar with our promo for the Dark Zone Live. And if you would like to get an all-access pass to this online streaming event, a virtual cruise, if you will, the Dark Zone presents the Queen Mary Virtual Haunt and Music Fest. This event will occur on October 29th through November 1st, 2020. Be the third caller to call in to the studio tonight for your chance to win an exclusive free live stream ticket. Enjoy 24-hour surveillance, interaction with your favorite paranormal investigators, live music, and Halloween costume contest. That'll be fun to watch. Live streaming, I think. A bunch of people just modeling their clothes in these oddly framed video streams. So that'll be fun. And if you want to get that access pass, again, you want to call the studio number, which is 855-472-5483. Broadcasting, the KGRA digital broadcasting station brings this to you, courtesy of the darkzone.tv. All right. So, and don't confuse that the open lines in the last 30 minutes for tonight's show are separate. So you can call in the first hour tonight. And if you're the third person to call in to the studio, not to Debbie and I speaking live, just to the studio, that's all you have to do to win these passes. In the last 30 minutes, that's separate. That's for when you want to call in and ask your questions or share your tales and experiences as well. If you are somewhat new to KGRA or new to KGRA, we are now streaming our content on YouTube and Facebook for video format. So KGRA, as you know, it's been one of the biggest, if not the biggest, online streaming platforms for audio streaming and internet radio. But now we're moving into video, and we'll be taking over that segment soon enough as well. So again, to call in the Paranormal Radio app lines in the last 30 minutes is 85-KGRA live. And now I have to do my own personal promo for next Saturday. I really hope that you'll join us, because it just so happens that Paranormal Now falls on Halloween. So that will be your chance to call in. We're going to open the lines up for an hour and a half. So in the first half an hour, my father, Alan R. Smith, will be coming on to speak about the history of Halloween. And then that last hour and a half, it's up for you to call in and share your spooky story. And if you do, and we get at least 7 callers, then one of those names will be entered to win a free KGRA t-shirt and KGRA coffee mug. So have the courage, reach out for that cell phone, your landline, whatever it is, call in and win your free KGRA merch. And also, this is our chance to just hang out on Halloween and have fun, because I know that I'm not going to be trick-or-treating like so many other people, and we're certainly not bobbing for apples, perhaps never more after this period in time. I'm not sure that's quite sanitary, but I guess it didn't really bother us when we were kids. Nonetheless, I think a lot of us will not be going out that Halloween. So hang out with us. We're going to have a Halloween party. We'll be playing some music, including music from Septembrio, who you're familiar. And obviously their music is quite paranormally influenced. All right. Debbie Jordan-Kauble was the central figure in Bud Hopkins' New York Times bestseller, Intruders, The Incredible Visitations at Copley Woods, as well as the 1992 CBS miniseries Intruders, using the pseudonym Kathy Davis to protect her young family. In 1992, she revealed her true identity and co-authored with her sister Kathy Mitchell, Abducted, the story of the Intruders Continues. And she has just finished a revised, expanded edition of Abducted, which will be coming out quite soon. While more recently, she very rarely makes public appearances, she has appeared on the Discovery Channel's Investigation X, the History Channel's UFO Hunters, the Sci-Fi Channel, Unsolved Mysteries, Sightings, I love Sightings, Maury Povich, Danny Bonaducci, Oprah Winfrey's AM Chicago, the Dinny Petty Show, Canada, as well as others. She has been the guest speaker at numerous universities, think tanks, and conferences around the world, as well as guest appearances on numerous radio broadcasts and podcasts. She co-hosted her own podcast, Midwest Paratalk, with Gregg Cable, and together with Gregg, co-founded the paranormal research team, the Paranormal Underground. And we'll be discussing some of her discoveries just a bit regarding the Paranormal Underground. Her special interest in paranormal research is with electronic voice phenomena, and she has collected many impressive examples over the last several years. She is a wife, mother to 4, and grandmother to 8. She lives in north central Indiana, was a member of the disaster action team for the local chapter of the American Red Cross, Bravo, a member of Mensa, a licensed cosmetologist, and works full-time at an automotive electronics parts supplier. I guess that puts her in the category of jack of all trades. I'm not sure. Investigator for the Mutual UFO Network in New York State, working with a team in finding the truth. Whoops. Did I just say you're an investigator in New York State? Well, that is a copy and paste issue. That would be my fault, ladies and gentlemen. My apologies.
That's not me.
Welcome, Debbie, to Paranormal Now. I'm going to stop myself right there.
That's okay. I was an investigator for Indiana MUFON for about 10 years, but not New York.
But not New York. No. See, New Yorkers, we're just so, centered. The world revolves around us, right? So welcome. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for doing this. And for everybody who was listening, I was very excited to have Angela Shear come on. But it's really been a blessing that Angela was so kind to connect Debbie and myself. And Debbie, there's a lot that we can talk about tonight, of course. And for those who may not be familiar with your story, with Bud Hopkins' book or the mini-series, can you introduce us to your close encounters experiences that sort of set you off on this lifelong endeavor?
I've been, I was like born into this, I guess. I grew up in a family that we always talked about paranormal stuff. Well, we didn't call it paranormal, but ghosts and things like that. And my sister, who's older than me by 11 years. Back in 1965, she had a UFO encounter that she came home, was pretty stunning to her. She had some missing time while taking my mom to the bingo game. And so, we grew up hearing about stuff like this. And back on June 30th, 1983, I had recently gotten divorced, had two little kids, and moved back home with my mom and dad so I could get on my feet. And I one evening was preparing to go. My neighbor that lived behind us was my friend. She's a seamstress, and she was letting me cut patterns out for her to make a little extra money. So I was preparing to go to Deanna's house to cut out some patterns. We had just finished dinner. I was standing at the kitchen sink washing my hands, or I should say, wash. I used to say wash, but But
Worsh has its charm.
Bud broke me of that, by the way. But I noticed a strange light in the pump house of the swimming pool, attached to the swimming pool that was in my parents' backyard. And I mentioned it to my mom, and she didn't seem too concerned about it. I had an odd feeling about it because I had been out there before, earlier in the afternoon, and knew I'd shut the door, but I don't know, something rubbed me the wrong way with it. Mm-hmm. But so, when I left a few minutes later, I decided to go back to the turnaround. It's a tri-level house, and it had two driveways. One went down the front and one went along the side, and then had a big turnaround, like a roundabout behind the house. And then, so I thought, well, I'll go down the roundabout and come back up just to make sure everything looks copacetic. And mind you, at this time, I'm not thinking about aliens by any stretch of the imagination or any other kind of weird stuff. I'm thinking about, burglars, and the fact that I'm about to leave my mom at the house with my two little kids alone, because my dad worked second shift at Ford, so he wasn't home. Mm-hmm. Couple minutes that it took me to get back there, the light was gone. And I thought that was strange. And I noticed that the pedestrian door to the garage that was attached to the house was open. And I knew that wasn't quite right either. That shouldn't have been open. But instead of stopping, I just went to Deanna's, which took all of 2 minutes. But as soon as I got there, I called Mom and told her what I'd seen. And my mom's like, well, don't worry about it. I'll just lock the door. I think I don't hear anything. Everything's fine. Just stuff like that. She didn't seem concerned. I'm like, okay. So I hung up the phone, and then no sooner did I hang it up than it rang. So I just picked it up on instinct. I mean, I just hadn't even really got my hand off of the receiver. And it was my mom. And she said in the weirdest voice, I need you to come home right now. And she sounded scared, and my mom never got scared of anything. She was cool cucumber. And it kind of freaked me out. And I remember saying to her, why? What's going on? And, she's just saying, I just need you to come home right now. So I got in the car. I told my friend, look, I'll be back in a few minutes. I got to go home real quick and check on something. I went. Her husband had overheard part of my conversation and had told me, tell your mom to call the police. That's what we pay him for. And my mom heard her and she said to me, I don't want anyone here but you. I'm like, okay. So I went home, pulled up that side driveway again, right alongside the house there, and got out and went into the house through the Florida room. My mom was standing out there in the Florida room, and I reached over and grabbed a shotgun that my dad had that he had kept tucked behind the trash compactor back there. Mm-hmm. And my mom said, that's not loaded. And I said, well, whoever's out there doesn't know that. I'll get close enough to them that I can beat the shit out of them with it, and they won't know what hit them.
That's confidence.
I mean, well, and that's even weird because I was not that brave person back then. Now I might do that now, but back then I really was not brave like that.
Well, was that the fight or flight, and the fight just happened to kick in?
I don't, maybe. I mean, I was definitely anxious. I went outside. I mean, the fact that I went home and went out there walking around in the dark, knowing that someone could be out there, that's just all of that's not like me at all. But I did it. went out there looking around, didn't see anything out of the ordinary. My dog had been in the garage when I left, my little dog, and because we kept her in there at night because she was like the Irma la Douche of the neighborhood.
Did she bark at all, or?
No, but I found her underneath my dad's ladder truck, and she would not come out. I tried to get her to come to me, and she whined and carried on. I'm like, fine, stay there. And I made my way back across the yard and into the garage through the pedestrian door, and I started to like slink around and said some stuff like, okay, I know you're in here. I have a gun. There was a couple of mattresses leaned up against the wall on one side. And I kind of looked behind those mattresses thinking somebody's got to be. If there's anybody in here, that's where they're hiding.
Okay.
About the time I got to those mattresses, I stopped. And all of a sudden I felt like my whole body was on fire. I've never felt anything like that in my life. And I stopped, and it stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, oh my God, I have to get out of here. I suddenly got this overwhelming terror that I had to get out of that garage. And I headed to the pedestrian door. And as soon as I hit the doorway, something hit me like a ball of lightning in the chest, like a bolt. And it started in my, I guess, I don't know what you call it, that solar plexus, like right there at your chest and your upper abdomen. Mm-hmm. And it burned and felt like electricity. And it felt like I could feel every molecule of my body vibrate, like I was took apart by molecule. And I could not see. It was so white bright. The light was so bright that I was blind. I mean, it's that kind of bright white that you don't know whether your eyes are open or closed. You can't tell the difference. But I'm sure my eyes were closed, but it was that intense. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm going to die. This is what it feels like to die. And then I heard a voice, a disembodied voice. I couldn't see anyone, and it seemed like it was behind me almost. And it said, it was unfortunate that I had that I felt that pain, that wasn't intended.
Ah, okay.
And then the next thing I know, I'm out through the doorway, about 20 feet onto the pavement, facing the back of the house where the swimming pool is, and I see movement in front of me. And remember, my eyes are blinded at this point. If you've ever gotten your picture taken with a flash cube from the 70s and you forgot to blink, you know what I'm talking about, because you get these white spots in your vision for like 30 minutes. Well, that's the way my eyes were. So I could see movement in front of me, and it was kind of dark outside at that point. Mm-hmm. But and I thought I could make out like 6 little kids. They were like the size of kids, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 year olds. They weren't big people, and they were all over the yard, and they all kind of lined up and started to glide in front of me. I don't know how, I'm bad judgment of distance, but from one corner of the yard down towards me, but not at me. And that's when I saw this thing to my left in the yard. And it was probably about, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 feet to my left out in the yard. Mm-hmm. It wasn't very big. It was shaped like an egg-shaped almost. And I almost don't think it was completely sitting on the ground, because it seemed like it bobbled just ever so slightly, moved. And it had a couple of soft round balls of light around the widest part of it. And then I noticed there was a ball of light in front of me about the size of a basketball. And it was about as high up as I am tall. I'm 5'3". Mm-hmm. And then it went down really slow to the ground and back up again. And I got the distinct impression that it was looking at me, and I don't know why I felt that. And then these little people, these children, kind of glided in front of me and into this thing. When I saw that thing, I thought, holy shit, I didn't want to look at it, but I didn't not want to look at it, because I was afraid. I needed to know where, if it came closer to me, I needed to know where it was in relationship to where I was at all times. You know what I mean? I didn't want to see it, but I needed to know where it was. It's the only way I can explain how I felt.
Sure.
And then I heard, and then I thought, for some reason, at some point in this whole scenario, I thought, oh my God, my kids, because they were in the house. And I thought, oh my God, my kids. And as soon as I thought that, I immediately heard this disembodied voice again say in my head, your kids are fine. And then
were these sympathetic voices?
They weren't scary. And I can't really tell you whether it was a male or a female. It was just kind of a generic, non-gender identifiable voice. And it didn't have a lot of emotion to it.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
And then I heard my name. And as soon as I heard my name, it was like someone snapped their fingers. And I was suddenly able to move, because prior to that point, I couldn't move. Once the vibrating stopped, I could not move my body. I could move my eyes, but I couldn't see nothing. But I couldn't run. I was stuck where I was. But as soon as I heard my name, that kind of stopped. Like somebody snapped their fingers and I woke up, so to speak. And I turned and started to walk up the steps to the upper porch, because it was a tri-level. And when I got up there, my mom was standing in the doorway like this little zombie. And as soon as she saw me, she snapped awake. And she said, "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" And I said, "Yeah, everything's fine. Everything's cool." And at that point, I completely forgot what I just told you. I didn't remember it until 2 days later.
And how did it come back to you? Well,
it came back to me because, the next day, I woke up the next. Deanna, I went and told Deanna I didn't want to sew anymore, but I felt like I needed to get wet. And it was a hot, July 30th. And then we had a swimming pool, and she's like, "Okay, that's cool." So her and her daughter came over and we walked out to the swimming pool to swim. We were out there for about 10 minutes, maybe max. As we were walking across the yard, her daughter steps on something in the grass and it makes her foot burn. And by the time we got to the swimming pool, her foot was numb. And by the time we were all three in the pool for a few minutes, we all started getting nauseated, me especially. And I couldn't see. I started noticing white halos around everything. And I had a serious, pukey headache. So we gave up, and they went home. I went to bed. Next morning when I woke up, my eyes were swollen shut and I couldn't see, and I was in excruciating pain. So my mom took me to the emergency room, and first thing the doctor asked me at the emergency room was that I looked into the arc of a welder's torch. And I'm like, why? No. So they diagnosed me with some serious conjunctivitis, and I had two different drops and a jelly thing to put in my eyes. Took weeks to heal, and they never got better. And then 2 days later, it's 4th of July weekend. All the kids came over to swim. Mom and I and everybody were getting ready to take the kids out to the pool. My nephew comes running in the house, and he goes, "Grandma, there's something wrong with your yard." And she's like, "What? So we all went out there. And it was so weird because none of us saw it until then. And we walked out there. There was that mark in the yard that it was an 8-foot circle with a 49-foot swath coming off of it, shot off to one side. Everything in the circle was laid down and brown and dead. And my mom says, "Well, that's where the UFO landed the other night." And I looked at my mom and said, "What?" Like that. And then it was like somebody slapped me in the face, and I kind of just went catatonic. I mean, I remember looking at the mark in the yard, then I started seeing these big black eyes, and then slowly what I had experienced started to drizzle back.
It was like a trigger.
Yes. And I mean, the dog that had been out there that night She had to be put to sleep in, I think, of the early fall of that year. By then, all her hair had fallen out. She'd gone blind. Her teeth fell out.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And I was sick as hell for an entire year. I got swollen glands. My hair got thin. My gums bled. I had no immune system. It was horrible. And I had basically a nervous breakdown.
All right, you know what, Debbie, we're going to have to hold it there. We're right up at the first break of the first hour. We will continue with Debbie Jordan-Kauble on the other side of this break, and there's a lot more to cover, and I promise later in the show we will get to the EVPs as well. So this is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio, your best contact for alternative talk radio. I will see you on the flip side.
And you are the sky. I need to swim free, and you need to fly. I live for daylight, you live for the night. You love to wander, and I want to be right, but the sweetness in me.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
I'm a mess, but a hot mess. Learning to love all my indiscretions. I've been going and I don't wanna be found. Go on and I don't wanna be found. I live for the night.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. With me tonight is Debbie Jordan-Kauble. As a friendly reminder, we get the best bumper music from Septembrio, but now Lizette Xavier, that's the music that you heard in the break going in and out of, has also contributed some songs for bumper music. We thank Lizette for that. And if you want to find out more about her music, go to LizetteXavier.com. All right, so the first hour is not yet finished. So if you want to win the Dark Zone live tickets to watch the free stream, please call in, and the third caller will win that pass. Our producer, Bill Skywatcher, is waiting in the studio to get your call and become the winner. Why not do it? Just try it. Go ahead, call in. It's going to be a fun 3 nights, and we'll be celebrating here on our own on Paranormal Now on Halloween night. But this is a 3-night event. So if you want to celebrate the full holiday, the 29th through the 1st, back-to-back, be the third caller in this hour, and you'll win the free live stream ticket. And that number is 855-472-5483 or 85-KGRA Live. All right, so Debbie, we left it at a pretty heavy place.
Yeah.
And although I must say that your entire experience would be categorized, I think, as heavy. Would you put it in the category of traumatic? Because some people do speak in terms of PTSD and.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that experience, and that also is the experience that I wrote Bud about, and that's the central experience of the book Intruders, and and definitely it was traumatic, and I had other strange things prior to that were traumatic. But that was the big one. And that was the one that had witnesses and left the mark in the yard, which I just emailed those pictures to you. But I can say now, I mean, that was 35 plus years ago. And I've had different kinds of experiences since then, and not as traumatic. Even back then, though, I mean, I could say, whatever it was I was interacting with wasn't intentionally harming me. And obviously I'm here and I'm alive now. I had I believe that my eyes were permanently damaged that night, and that's why I had cataracts in my 30s, and I ended up having total lens replacement in both eyes. I was just, I believe, just into my early 50s at that point, which was still very young. They were shot, and I have macular degeneration as well, and so I believe that my eye damage was a result of that night. Just
that one singular night.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, I can't prove that. That's just my feeling. Mm-hmm. And now I have I do PTSD EMDR therapy for that and other things. My therapist that I've been talking to, she's amazing, and nobody's life's perfect. Everybody's got their things, but
sure.
I've been able to, I'm fortunate because I've been able to talk to her about this weird stuff as well. And so we actually did some processing for this experience, and it's helped. But something inside me has changed. That was the whole point of my first book, and now the second one is to show people who have gone through this and have been traumatized that, you can come through it a better person. And I've grown and changed in ways that I probably wouldn't be able to had I not been through this trauma. So
when is the second edition coming out?
Well, we're hopeful that it will be ready for print to be ordered maybe early summer. The actual manuscript is finished. There's still a lot of work to be done and editing and whatnot, but August Night Press is going to help me and get it out there. It's like a journal of experiencer's journal, basically, from beginning to end, from the traumatic beginning until the end. Well, and not the end, but I had to end it somewhere. I'm not done yet. Yeah. I mean, and I'm a work in progress, and I hope I'm around for a long time to continue on. But and my friend just texted me. He says, "Be sure to tell him if you want to watch the movie Intruders, you can find it on YouTube now."
Yes, I found it, but I was really wanting to get like a decent quality. It's kind of like, it looks like it's recorded probably off of a really old VHS. Which is cool. Well, I'm glad that people can watch it. But I would just love to get like a digitized from the original print,
Well, VHS is the only thing you could get it on for years and years. It's just been in the last couple of years that you've been able to get it on DVD. And I actually bought the DVD of it from Amazon. You'd think I had a copy of it, but I didn't. But I actually just recently got one. And be careful when you order it, because there's 2 Intruders, and one of them isn't mine.
Well, please tell your friend thank you for reminding me that you can watch it on YouTube. And so you can get it on DVD as well?
Now you can get it on DVD. Yeah.
Okay.
On Amazon. It's I don't know. It's not Blu-ray or anything like that, but it's better than VHS.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, well, then I encourage everyone out there. If it's something that it's a field of study you're passionate about, it's certainly worth checking out. So, after you've had this trigger, right? And it's almost like, was it like a download of information of memories?
I always compared it to somebody pulling a finger out of the dam, pulling the finger out of the dike, and the water starts to come out, and then it finally cracks and the whole thing blows. I mean, that day was the beginning. And like I said, that whole year, I pretty much probably had a nervous breakdown. I was still having weird experiences, seeing strange things. It seemed like it escalated from that point on for the first year or year and a half. And I was having serious anxiety. It was disabling. I mean, I couldn't sleep at night. I was scared for my kids, and I would sit up in a chair between their bed at night. I had a serious phobia of going to the bathroom at night because the bathroom, the window in that bathroom overlooked the mark in the yard. And I don't know why, but I felt like if I went to the bathroom in the dark at night, something was going to come through the window and take me.
And was that a fear that you had just as a child anyway, or this
No.
is a new...
That didn't start until after that night. All kinds of just, traumatic things were happening to me. I was, like I said, I was having I think a nervous breakdown. God bless my parents, who have both passed away now. But they they were there for me and helped me, even when I didn't know I didn't know why I was being this way, and I didn't, and I was reaching out. Eventually I found that book, Missing Time, that Bud wrote. I went to the library all the time because it was free, and I was a single mom with no money, So, and I like to read, so I would take my kids to the library and get books, stacks of them, bring them home. And I had brought home Missing Time, not really fully knowing what it was about, but thought it looked interesting. And as I started to read it and realize what it was about, I started having panic attacks. It was ridiculous. I went to the emergency room twice in 1 week thinking I was having a heart attack after trying to read this book. And my mom finally told me, she goes, "You got to take that book back to the library because we can't afford this." I was on their insurance. So, but I realized that there was an address in the back. Once the mark in the yard, I took pictures of the mark in the yard, and I realized there was an address in the back of that book that I could write to the author. And I started thinking about my sister's experience that she had told us about in 65, and then the mark in the yard and seeing those big eyes and having these crazy dreams. So I wrote him. And it was probably many weeks before I heard back from him. I went out one night with some friends, and I came home, and my mom said, "Hey, that guy who wrote that book just called." And I was like, "What?" I was freaking out. And she said, "Yeah, there's his phone number. You going to call him?" And I thought about it for a long time. Then I finally did. And that was 3-year investigation from that point on, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, really, though, because he saved my life. I mean,
he saved your life because what, you didn't feel alone, or
I didn't. At first when he showed me pictures after I met him the first time, and he came to our house. He showed me a drawing that someone had done of one of those big-eyed things. And when he first showed it to me, I thought it was my drawing. That's how much like my drawing it looked. And I said, "Well, how did you have my drawing?" And he's like, "That's not yours." And he showed me the name. The lady had written it. She was in like North Carolina or South Carolina. I puked. I literally ran upstairs, hyperventilated, and puked because there's no way on the planet that woman could know what that looked like if she had seen what I saw, because this was 30 some years ago. Nobody talked about it like that. And
of course, yeah,
so, but he helped me. He helped me learn to live with it. He introduced me to people who were like me, and we, help. I don't know. I feel like he helped me get control of myself and my life. And, I felt sorry for him because afterwards, after Intruders came out, he was just inundated with people. Excuse me.
Bless you. Yeah, I think the whole world was sort of inundated, during that period. I mean, the work that Bud Hopkins did, sort of opened the floodgates to an awareness of this phenomena. At any point when you remembered that night, did you think that could have been a dream or some other, implanted memory?
Well, I probably was my biggest skeptic. When I started to actively investigate what happened at my house, I did everything I could possibly do to find the most reasonable explanation for it. I called the universities about the yard, the ground in the yard. We called the gas company. I tried to find every reasonable explanation that I could find. That's how I always do things. And even now, I always try to find, and usually if you look hard enough, there is a more prosaic explanation for things, but it's that once or twice that, you can't find it. So I did. And I even questioned myself. I questioned my own sanity many, many times, thinking, what is wrong with me? Why would I see these things? What did I do to deserve this? You know what I mean? Or why is this happening to me?
Did you feel like a victim?
Sometimes in the beginning I did, because I felt like I was out of control of it, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I did. I felt, you know, I always said, if somebody wanted to talk to me, don't sneak up on me, and don't, you know, sneak up on me in the dark and hit me with a big ball of light. Just come and ask me. I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
You know, but this sneaking up shit's got to stop, because you're going to give me a heart attack.
Well, but that's what always comes up on this program is, are these beings doing something to you that's immoral or unethical?
I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess from our standards they would be. I mean, they didn't ask me for none of this, and I didn't ask for any of this. Like today, you know, I've done the best I can with what I have been dealt, with the hand that I've been dealt in life. I've done the best I can with it. And but I didn't ask for this. I didn't go looking for it. Nowadays, things are a lot different now than they were 40 years ago. People go out in groups and they try to call this stuff in, you know what I mean? But I didn't do any of that. I was just trying to live my life, and
it just got,
and it just happened.
It just came out of left field and shocked you. Another part of this story, I think, that, you know, there are different stages of acceptance, I think, of all this phenomena, right? Someone says, I see a strange light in the sky. Most people can accept that, right? Someone says, I saw a UFO more up close. A little bit less people can accept that. And then you talk about an abduction, and even significantly less will accept that as something real, if not someone's dream or imagination. But then in your story and many others, there's this aspect of some kind of alien hybrid, human hybrid program. And can you enlighten us a little bit as to what you think that is, and maybe better yet, explain to us what happened to you in regard to this hybrid thing? Well,
you know, that's a theory that a lot of researchers have come across and have developed over the years. I can only speak for myself. And I do know of some other cases that Bud worked with. And that's the craziest part of the whole thing for me, and the hardest part to talk about, because the most embarrassing, and it is, you know, it's weird. It's weird. I mean, it's weird enough to have the mark in the yard, but at least I had the mark in the yard. I had my mom there. We had neighbor witnesses, you know what I mean? So it wasn't just me. And the other things that happened in our lives, you know, there was always somebody with me, or a friend or a neighbor. I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of support. But the one thing that I did alone, well, except for my mom, was, when I was engaged to my husband, my first husband, I was still 17 years old. I was young. And I found out I was pregnant. And, you know, I wasn't married yet. So in my family, and in my house with my dad, you don't tell your old man you're pregnant until you're sure, because you know it's going to be a shit show, and you don't want to have to deal with it unless you absolutely have to. So I told Mom, we got me confirmed at the doctor. And, you know, we moved the wedding up to April, so I wouldn't be hugely pregnant, because I was already engaged, but I turned 18 in February and got married in April. But, and I was getting used to, and my husband was getting used to or my boyfriend was getting used to gonna have a baby, you know, in the house. But then in March, I started to, I had a really crazy dream. I was babysitting for my sister, the older one. She had like a herd of little kids. She had 4 little ones. And I was babysitting for her on a Saturday night. I can even remember I was watching the Bob Newhart show on TV. I had the front door open. The kids were in bed. I was laying on the couch. listening to the show, and I felt real weird. And also I started feeling like I was drugged, and I could feel somebody stroking my back and my hair. And it startled me, but I instantly felt, oh, it's just Lisa. And, I went right to sleep. Well, I woke up the next morning and I was in my little niece's bed where I was going to crash when Kathy and them came home. But I had this horrible feeling there was something wrong with my baby. And so I got up and I tried to shake it off. I'm like, you just had a bad dream. You just had a bad dream. And I went to the bathroom, checked to see, everything looked all right, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was wrong. And something was wrong with my baby. So my friend Dolores took me to Planned Parenthood. She said, just go get another pregnancy test and you'll be fine. And then you'll calm down. Everything's all right. And I'm like, okay. So I went, and that pregnancy test came back that I was not pregnant. And I remember the lady coming out and saying, if you don't have a period in X amount of days, and contact your family doctor, but you're not pregnant. I'm like, I freaked out. And Dolores had to drive me back home, and I was freaking out and crying. And so I told my mom, something's wrong with my baby. You got to take me to the doctor. Something's wrong. I told her I was spotting and stuff, even though I wasn't.
I mean, you had to just be swelled with worry.
I was freaked out. I was freaked out because I had these weird dreams with these big-eyed people, and I knew something was wrong with my baby. And I'm just at this, it's a dream. I'm just had a nightmare. I had a nightmare. This is just a nightmare. It's not real. This shit doesn't happen. It's not real. And then I'm not pregnant. So I go to the doctor. They do a pelvic exam and another pregnancy test. And he takes me and my mom into his office, and he goes, well, you are not pregnant. And my mom is like, well, did she have a miscarriage? Does she need a DNC? What's going on? And he's like, no, everything is fine. He said, we see this from time to time. That's exactly his words. We see this from time to time. It happens. You're young. You'll have other children. If I were you, I suggest that you just forget this ever happened. And I remember looking at him and saying, I ain't never going to forget this. So I went home. We never spoke of it again. I went ahead and Charlie and I got married, and history went on. And I literally never spoke about it again. Mom and I never talked about it. Nobody ever talked about it. Mom just told Dad I had a miscarriage. That was the end of that.
Well, did the doctor explain what the physical mechanism was, or did he not have an explanation?
He just said, we see this from time to time. It happens.
Is it one of the... I've heard people say that sometimes the body, right? I think there's a name for it, will reabsorb. Did he even infer that, or he was just confounded?
Not that I recall. No, basically he said, we just see this from time to time. No, she doesn't need a DNC. Everything looks normal. Go home and forget about it. You'll get pregnant and have another kid someday, So, yeah. And you got to remember, this was 40 some years ago. Okay. This was 42 years ago. And like I said, never spoke of it again. Well, all this comes out. All this stuff starts coming up to the surface now with Bud doing the investigation on the house after June 30, 83, and that trigger that opened the floodgates, and Bud comes and starts doing the investigation. At that point, my whole family and I are starting to remember all kinds of just weird little stuff that's happened through our whole lives. It'll be somebody will talk about something, and then me or Mom were like, oh my God, I forgot that happened. I can't believe I forgot that, and so more and more things were just coming up. Yeah. And, which is all in Intruders, and in the book that my sister and I wrote, there's a ton of them. There is not enough time. We're talking about an entire lifetime of stuff. So.
Sure. But that's not uncommon of anyone who has any kind of childhood trauma or, situations, where they were mistreated when they were younger. Once they can recognize the trauma that they had for what it was, it does sort of unlock memories. And you go, oh my God, I forgot that they had done that to me. And in that sense, I guess it's similar.
Well, it is, I think. And then, I think maybe it was like the second or third time Bud had come to Indiana to see the family and talk and do some more investigating. We had gone to actually, he had another case in Indiana. He was going to go out and talk to the lady, and there was supposed to be some kind of mark out in her field or something. And I went with him, took him over where she was at. And then on the way home, I kept thinking about that pregnancy, and I don't have any idea why. So we pull up in the driveway, and I'm just kind of sitting there feeling really weird. And he said, "Are you okay? What's the matter?" So we're in the driveway of my mom and dad's house at this point, getting ready to go in and have dinner and whatnot. And I said, I was pregnant once, and then my baby disappeared. And he said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, I was pregnant once, and then my baby disappeared." And he goes, "Well," I could see the look on his face. He was like, "What the hell is she telling me this for?" And then he was like, "Well, I'm really sorry," And I'm thinking to myself, "Oh my God, did I just say that? I'm so embarrassed. I feel like a nut job." And he looked at me like, "Okay." And I said, "Honestly, I have no idea why I felt compelled to just blurt that out to you right now the way I did. And now I am embarrassed that I even did." Well, as it turned out, when he got back to New York, he'd start getting letters from other women who'd had the same thing to happen to them. And they were connecting it with, a close encounter of the third kind somehow, the same way I was connecting it. And I can't tell you how I did that. But, at the end of the day, I was pregnant. I have 6 copies of the medical report and the records of it. And, I have copies of it when I was no longer pregnant with no real explanation for it. And there's no real explanation even written in the report, the charts, notes, and whatnot. But
and you didn't make any connection to your to any kind of extraterrestrial experience, or
the only thing was I had nightmares about
those aliens,
those aliens and my child, but they weren't. I've always called them dreams and nightmares because I can't prove anything other than that. And I'm not going to try to,
Yeah. And the beings that you saw, they're similar to the typical grays, or
100.
like in the top left of the KGRA screen.
Yep.
There in that little circle. Okay.
Yeah. And I drew pictures of those. 50 years ago, I was drawing pictures of those.
Well, I was going to ask you about that too. Yeah. Cause a lot of people say, when Communion came out, the book cover, that sort of just filled people's minds. They were just unaware that they had maybe seen it in a bookstore, and then it just came up later in their minds.
And I'm sure that happens, but that wasn't my case. I'm sure that happens. I'm not going to say that never happens because I'm sure it probably does. Bud was very careful about what he put out in the public with our case for the longest time because he wanted to hold some things back for control purposes, because he figured he was going to have more people come out.
Yeah, you can't tell people what happened. You have to. There's an investigative technique to this that the police use, but you don't reveal certain information so that if somebody shares a fact with you or an experience or something they witnessed. And if it's not in the public sphere, then they can verify whether that person, was there or not. And so I guess it's the same thing with abduction cases. It's if you hold back certain pieces of information, certain data, then you can use that to confirm whether someone is lying to you or just making up a tale to get their 5 minutes of fame. Mm-hmm. And how do you deal with the fame?
Well, I kind of, that's why I didn't do this. If you think this is a good idea to be famous by doing this or having these experiences, you're sadly mistaken. Yeah. I spent my whole life trying to be invisible and just try to fit in. And I did not do a lot of public speaking and stuff like that until after Bud wrote that book. I felt obligated to help him. So a lot of the stuff I did, I went with him.
Okay. Well, we're at the second break here. We'll get more on the sort of second half of this story, as you were, what we think happened to these hybrid children. We'll talk about that on the other side. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. Debbie, real quick, where can people find out more about you? Do you have a website that you prefer people go to?
Well, I have a website that's very sadly behind right now, but my husband's working hard to get it updated, and it's debshome.com, www.debshome.com.
Okay, check out www.debshome.com. We'll be right back.
Smell the air. I know you can feel it too. Changes here. It offers me you and everything.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
The signal from home base been down for several days, and I don't think it's ever coming back. Damage gear. I just wanna hear the guiding voice again. The signal went away for 27 days, searching through static for some kind of sign. Everything's golden gray, nothing goes in this place, walking in circles in the
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith on KGRA Radio, live streaming on YouTube and on Facebook video. Or if you want to listen and download the podcasts later, you can go to KGRA on Spreaker. And of course, for the live audio stream, as always, KGRradio.com. And taking us out of the break was music by Septembrio, one of my favorite groups out there. If you want to find out more about their music, go to Septembrio, spelled with a Y, septembrio.com. And of course, don't forget to sign up for the Telepath, the best in paranormal news newsletter. Subscribe now on the KGRAradio.com website, and you'll keep up with the best in paranormal and ufological news, cryptozoological, the whole gamut. So, as a friendly reminder, in the last half hour, we will have listener open lines. That number is 855-472-5483. Call in and you can ask Debbie Jordan-Kauble your questions. And that's 1-85-KGRA live. All right, we're back with Debbie. Debbie, so yes, the fame is a funny thing, right? What are some of the benefits that you've had, or positives rather, is probably a better word to use?
Positives, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I have met some of the most amazing people in my life, some of the smartest and most open-minded, and just, I mean, that's been my biggest blessing from all of this, is that I've met so many wonderful people. You know, in 35 plus years of being in this field, one of the ways that I learned how to deal with things that scared me was to learn as much about it as I can. And that's why I got into investigating for MoveOn, and then was an investigator for MoveOn for like 10 years here in Indiana. Because knowledge is power. And when you have knowledge and power, you're not afraid. So that's why, and that's how I deal with life. But I got involved with things like that, and I met wonderful people, and I learned a lot of things, and my mind expanded. And honestly, I think that, you know, Bud used to say to me, don't give the experience. He was a little more negative Nelly. Don't, you know, but I always said he's like that because he's in the emergency room of this whole thing. He's in the trauma unit where he sees everybody all tore up like I was in 1985. But he always used to say, don't give the experience credit for the strength that you have inside of you, and how you've grown and changed and stuff. But truly, in a way, I do. And I've been through things in life, not even UFO or paranormal related things in life, that some people don't come out of. And I've come through these things better and stronger than ever before. It's almost as if they're blessings, even though they're tragedies at the time. Yeah. And it's the same thing for this traumatic, these strange paranormal experiences I've had. They've become a part of who I am, and I'm pretty cool. most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a bit of a conundrum, but or a paradox rather. But I guess have some of those paranormal experiences actually help to serve you to get through harder times.
And yeah, I think so. And also, I feel, I can only speak for myself, as I always say, but I feel that somehow these interactions I've had with whatever these things were, and I don't claim to know whether they're extraterrestrial or some other dimension. Some things I've seen lead me to believe that some of the things that I've dealt with are not necessarily alien. They're alien to me and us, but I mean interdimensional or other realities or even other times, time travel or even, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm open to all of that. But for instance, that little bitty teeny ship that was in my mom and dad's backyard, that little 10 foot tall egg-shaped thing.
Okay.
Six little kids couldn't go in there and fly anywhere. They would be up each other's booties and not be able to move.
Right.
That was something else other than some kind of flying craft. I don't know what it was, but for ease of conversation, we called it a craft. Yeah.
And is that a photo of the visitation of that ship?
That's a photo of the mark that was left in the yard that stayed there for over 2.5 years, and snow melted off of it. And that's the second year.
Okay. All right. And then, and what is this here?
That is a shot of the streak that ran off of it. Mary, I told you there was like a 49-foot swath that came off of it. That was the swath, and that's the actual trail where those children kind of lined up and slid down towards this thing.
Okay.
That's the snow melting off of it as the snow falls.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, and how long is that trough?
It was like 49 feet, I
49
believe.
feet?
And it ended in a perfectly round arc. And there was a swath of, there's a row of trees on the north side of that yard. And right where that mark is, past that, where the row of trees is, the whole swath of tree leaves turned yellow and withered and fell off in the middle of July. And we had tomato plants that were planted on the other side of the pool, like not too far from where those little steps are there. Okay. And the tomato plants grew huge. The tomatoes were like cantaloupes, and the vines were as big around as my wrists, but you couldn't eat them tomatoes because when we cut them open and tried to eat them, they were so acidy that it would literally peel the skin off your lips.
Well, so when I was young, looking out my back window into the backyard, there were a couple of spots that looked similar to this, but there was still grass. The grass was just more brown, and I know that was described as it was some kind of bacterial in the soil or some bacteria in the soil that had caused that. But this is quite different. This is like almost as if it was singed, right?
Yeah, Bud did testing on the soil, and I actually have a bunch of samples that I still saved. My parents don't live there anymore, and they've passed away. But I managed to take a bunch of samples with me of the area, and I've kept them. But Bud had it tested. In his book, I can't remember what it said. They had to put it in an oven for I don't know how many hours at such a temperature to get the soil to even remotely look like that. And you can put that soil in a glass of water, and 24 hours later, usually with clumps of dirt, you would have mud. With this soil, you just have a rock. And there was no life in the soil in the testing, not even down to the bacterial level. And the grass was there for the longest time, but it was just laid down and brown. And then it just crumbled into dust. And that's when you ended up with that, just the dirt.
Have you shared about these samples before? Because I just wonder if, the government comes knocking on your door saying, I heard you've got some,
I wouldn't give them all of them, but I'd give them one. Sure. I don't have any problem with that. I'm not hiding anything. I'd like to know too. Yeah, but it's weird. There was a power line. My dad had a 100-foot antenna for a ham radio near that area where that mark is. Okay. And the coax cables that ran from the antenna to the house, internally, the wiring was melted. And the transformer, when it finally blew, not too far along after that night, the company came out to replace the transformer, and my father told us that the guy he was talking to out there told him that the wiring within the transformer was all melted together.
So the wiring was melted, but the casing, was that
not affected?
No. That's bizarre.
That is bizarre.
And so could it be a jolt of intense electricity to cause that?
I have no clue.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know a lot of things. I can tell everybody who will listen what I remember, but I don't have any real answers. I don't have any more answers now than I did 45 years ago, except I have more questions.
That's always the case, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why I end the show with Live in the Mystery, because there's always going to be a mystery. Or, I suspect, infinitum, that it's just that, there's always going to be a question, because we might solve all the answers of this galaxy or this universe, but what if there are multiple universes? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And it's funny to think that your experience is just so mind-blowing. And yet there might be so much more out there.
And, oh my God, yes.
Yeah. And so, and speaking of that, so are there hybrid children out there right now?
I am going to say, yeah, I would imagine somewhere there is something, I don't, there are millions of women who've reported, strange things happening with their pregnancies. I don't know whether all of them lead to that. Bud and Dave Jacobs was another one who was really, Dave Jacobs more so than even Bud was that whole hybrid agenda. I'm open. I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to me with the pregnancy. I don't know, if I had dreams of meeting the child years later, meeting my daughter. Okay. I knew it was a girl. I knew when I woke up from that nightmare and I thought I was pregnant, or my pregnancy there was something wrong with my pregnancy. I already knew that it was a girl. And years later, I had dreams of seeing an older girl, and I drew a picture of her once, but I'm not that great of an artist, so trying to explain it to Bud, but I don't know. I can't say 100% sure if it was a dream or some kind of altered reality or something. I don't know. All I can tell you is what I remember seeing. And then you have to figure out what works for you. You know what I mean?
But you do believe that these were extraterrestrials?
I believe I had interaction with something other than human life forms. I don't know where they came from. I don't know if they come from some other planet. I don't know if they come from, I've seen things that almost lead me to believe that it might be some kind of dimensional thing, because the blue guy one time, I called him the blue guy. I was in my house at my mom and dad's, and I looked up and I saw the shape of a little, gray alien, except he was all blue, like blue light and sparkly around the edges like a sparkler. And right before he would have passed through to my field of vision at the door frame, he went through like an invisible door frame. And and everywhere he touched this invisible line was like a sparkler as he walked through it. And back in the early 70s, I had a dream where two of those little big-eyed, black-eyed guys came in my bedroom with a black box in their hand. When they left my room, they kind of slid backwards and they looked real faint and wavy, like I was looking at them through fire. You know how stuff looks like when you look at it through heat? And as they got wavier, they got brighter and narrower until they were just a white line in the room. And then they popped like a flash bulb and they were gone.
Just like that.
Just like that. And when I woke up the next morning, told my husband about the dream I had, the first thing out of his mouth was, "What the hell did you eat for dinner?" He thought I had one hell of a nightmare.
Yeah, that was quite a dinner.
And I think sometimes then in this interaction, this thing I've seen or whatever, I think it's triggered something in my mind where it turned a switch on in me. I think everyone has a switch in there, but I think these interactions over the years have sort of triggered something in my mind that has enhanced my, like, I don't want to say, I guess, psychic ability or intuitions, stuff like that. So that's another positive thing, I guess, that's come from this contact.
Like your brain has sort of been awakened or stimulated in a way that...
It's different. Something that's different.
Heightened senses, in a sense.
Yeah. And, in high school, I was in remedial government. Okay. I'm not proud of that. But then by the time I married my late husband, he was convinced I was smart, and he convinced me to take the test to get into Mensa, which is for people with high IQ. And I actually got accepted into Mensa. And then so I went and got my high school transcripts and my IQ testing and put them against my Mensa testing. And I was like up 30 points. And I don't know if that's even possible. I don't know how that happens. I was told that, you reach a certain level and you don't really change.
Well, I mean, certainly we know of cases where people have been in accidents and can suddenly play the piano like a master, or speak another language. And so, I mean, the brain, I don't think is limited. I think that it is somehow a matter of us figuring out how to unlock it. And it seems that more often than not, it's something, an outside force affecting us. For you, it was these visitations. And for others, it might be an accident, but perhaps that your brain did, some aspect of it was unlocked.
I've talked to tons of people, literally hundreds of people like me over the years, and they tell me the same thing. They feel the same thing. They feel that these contacts have changed something in them. I try to stay grounded. I've always had kids to raise, and I thought, I can't afford to be crazy.
Sure.
I mean, yeah. I told Bud one time, I said, please, when they did the psychological testing and stuff early on in the investigation, I told the doctors at the hospital, it's okay if you tell me I'm crazy, because I know they make pills for that, and I'll just take a pill and this will all go away, and I'll be fine with that.
And just move on with my life.
Yeah. So, and he's like, well.
Well, I'm glad you didn't, because I think we've learned that the 90s got a little fast and loose with pill taking.
They're like, I think the testing results only said that I was above average intelligence, and I didn't suffer from any kind of delusions or schizophrenia or anything like that. And I didn't have, they did EEG on my brain, and I wasn't having seizures. I mean, we're trying to find every possible explanation for
Sure.
all this.
Yeah. Now, are you able to, is there an empathy, or empath connection between yourself and other abductees?
Yes. The minute I meet someone, I know they're like me. I feel it. It's a different feeling from them. They don't even have to talk. All I have to do is look in their eyes and I see it. It's like I see me. It's just I have developed this empathic ability for all people and, worlds and the planet and anything living. And I feel this intense connection with everything that's alive. And it's just amazing. I wish I could make everybody in the world feel this, because this would be a different place. Trust me.
I think so too. It's funny. I speak to my wife about this sometimes. It surprises me how so many people live close to nature, but aren't connected to nature. They're not tuned into that sort of undercurrent of energy, or whatever you want to call it, whether it's just evolution or something spiritually energetic. There's people who take the time to listen, I think, and tune in to nature can find more peace. And yet I think there's so many of us, because I grew up in a slightly more rural area compared to where I live now in New York. And there are a lot of people that lived near the woods, next to the woods, went out, partied in the woods, but it was like the woods was just a backdrop. They didn't take the time to breathe it in.
Mm-hmm. And and this is kind of, in a way, this what led me to the paranormal side of UFO paranormal stuff. And I started to feel like there was a connection between, TV's Ghost Hunter TV shows started coming on TV and whatnot. My nephew and I had tinkered around with EVP capturing, years before. I felt compelled to sit in my kitchen one day with a recorder and my nephew, and we played this. We sat there in silence for 30 minutes and then flipped it over and did another 30 minutes in the old cassette. You know what I mean? We went to listen to it at my mom's, took it to my mom's to listen to it with my mom. Okay. And we heard a voice suddenly, as clearly as the EVPs I sent you, say, are the spirits listening? And then it sounded like an old man. And then it sounded like a younger boy or girl right behind it said, can I listen too? And it was in that moment I had this epiphany and this light bulb, like, oh my God, what if we're the spirits to somebody else and somebody's trying to hear us? And then I started thinking, that I went back to my experiences and the memories and the like things I'd thought someone had tried to teach me or told me about dimensions. And, I drew a picture one time called Casey's Bubbles, where it was these bubbles that were all connected. And that little flat place where soap bubbles connect for an instant is the place where you can go through to the other bubble. Right. But it's not permanent. It shifts, and then the bubble pops, and then it goes away. What if these little EVPs and these things we were catching were like, we just happened to get in one of those little flat places where the bubbles were touching. You know what I mean? The universes or dimensions.
So they think we're the spirits, and we think they're the spirits.
And then that was like the catalyst that just set me off.
Well, parallel universes, why not?
And
right?
then and that's what sent me to UFO or paranormal research. And I've come to the conclusion after 15 years of that that about 90% of what I have captured on EVPs probably isn't even never lived here in this life and aren't actually what you would think of as ghosts, but I've somehow managed to tap into some other dimension for just a second. You heard how clear some of those were. Yeah,
and we're going to play those in just a bit. Before I do that, a reminder for everyone, if you want to call in the last half hour to speak with Debbie, the number is 85-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483. We'll open up those lines for you so you can ask your questions. And we will play those EVPs. Debbie, as I mentioned earlier, some of them were just so clear, unlike the very, very murky recordings with very loose translations or interpretations of what's being said. These are quite clear. So anyone listening, if you have earbuds on or headphones on, just to be safe, you might want to just turn them down just a hair because I boosted this audio, and then adjust up just in case. So this one I'm calling number 16, and so listen close. All right. So the second time it was slowed down 50% speed. So it sounds like who's that? Who that? Like, very faint in the beginning. Like, who is that? Right. Yeah. And then, oh boy, sounds like ooey. We got the number 16, but it's clear. It's not. I don't know any other way to interpret it.
Right. I told you I was with MRIPA. It was a great group in Indianapolis who I learned a lot from. And we did an investigation at the Crump Theater in Columbus, Indiana. And we were down under the theater where the dressing rooms were. And one of the fellas that was with us had a football jersey on, a sports jersey on with the number 16 on it. And it's like, oh my God, when I started listening to, it's, you might catch something like this once in a great while, but you'll listen to 100 hours of nothing in between, So when I'm like just cruising, listening to it, and I heard that, I came out of my chair. I was so excited.
Okay, so here's the thing. So if we went with the theory that our reality is bumping up against another reality momentarily, and we're picking up just hints of those people, that wouldn't really explain this, right? Because
no, I don't think so. Yeah. So like, I don't think all of EVPs and contact with weird stuff is extraterrestrial. I don't think it's all, interdimensional. And I think that, I believe that death is just a change, that we don't really die. Our bodies do, but we go somewhere else. And I believe that, some people hang around things that meant a lot to them, and don't know how to go or don't want to go. But
he's very excited about the number 16.
We're very excited about just seeing people down in the basement, I guess. I don't know. It's like, whoo, what do we got here?
Well, you know what? I mean, obviously you wouldn't know someone's name, right? So if you're like, oh my gosh, I would just call you number 16, or maybe I'd just call you Red Shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's another recording called Hi Ginger. What else could it be?
What do you say? I know. Yeah. I told you it was a private residence, and the people had reported seeing a little girl in their hallway upstairs. They didn't have any little girls in their family, but they did have a dog who walked around in the house, and the dog's name was Ginger. Right. So the dog walked past one of our pieces of recording equipment, and then something felt compelled to say, "Hi, Ginger."
But that's very a direct link, right?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, could that possibly coincide of all the names that are out there to say Ginger?
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence. I think this little girl plays with the dog.
It sounds cute, right? Like, hey, Ginger.
I mean, it's not scary. No. I mean, I had a woman who had an extremely unique name, and Gregg and I did an investigation there, her house up here where I live, and her grandma had passed away 2 weeks prior to us being there, and we got an EVP of an older woman's voice saying this woman's name, which was a very unusual and unique name. And when we played it back for her, she broke down crying and said, "That's my grandma." And it was a clear one like that. I mean, you definitely hear it. I don't know if it's one I sent you or not. I've got so many.
Well, I'll play this one here. This is called Oh Boy.
These are newer ones.
The volume might not be boosted as well, so let's see how well we can hear this. Did you hear that? It was pretty faint, right? Okay. Well, that wasn't. We'll have to see if we can get the audio worked out. But where was the old boy taken from?
That was recently. I'd sent you a couple of them, I think, from recent. I went to the Asher Walton house in Atlanta, Indiana, with some friends of mine who came up from Tennessee, Angelia being one of them, and her friend Katie, and their boyfriends and husbands, and we went there for an investigation with their paranormal dares, and all of us got. I think several of us got the same EVPs on our recording equipment. I've got 2 or 3 really good ones, I think, or maybe more. And that was it. So that was just recently. It's been a few months ago, and that was in Atlanta, Indiana.
Do you think that these spirits, what are they doing when humans are not there? When you're not investigating these spaces?
I don't know. just hanging around. I always say when I die, I got a big ass list of people I'm going to haunt, so I'll be busy for a long time.
Well, I think we've all done this at some point in our life, especially as we get older. There's a friend that I had lost when I was young, and every once in a while I just kind of put it out there, like, hey, if you want to send me a sign, and it's never happened. After 20 some years, and what does that mean? Why do some people report getting a sign from a past loved one, and others don't, or ask for it and don't receive it?
I don't have the answer to that, because that happened to me too. I told you before, I'm at the age now where I know as many dead people as I do living, and I would love to talk to a lot of them, and have tried and got nothing. And then when my mother passed away, my mom and I don't know that my brother and sisters talked much about death with my mother, but I did. Mom and I had in-depth conversations about death all throughout her cancer. And I told her, I made her promise, do something for me if you can, She's like, I will. And the night she died in the morning, and it was a long day, and I drove all the way back up north home an hour after, about 11:30 at night, got home, went to bed, laid down. I was, of course, distraught. My mom had just passed away, and we suddenly were woke by this crashing sound in the hallway down the stairwell. And my husband and I both jumped out of bed and ran over to the top of the stairwell and looked down, and there was a picture. I had a bunch of family pictures all up and down the wall there. This picture had flipped down the stairs and was sitting straight up, facing up at us. And it was a picture of my mother. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Mom. And I got really excited. And my husband's like, it just broke the nail. And I'm like, no, it didn't. We looked, and the nail was still on the wall. The back of the picture, it was just one of those cheap frames with the cardboard loop hanger thing, which they break, but this one was not broke. That picture jumped off of that nail and rolled down the stairs and landed face up at me. And my husband witnessed it. We both were woke up by it. I was so amped and excited, and my dog was so nervous that we went downstairs, and he went in the kitchen to get something, and I was sitting on the couch. My dog was panting, having freaking out. And on the edge of the stairs, I had 3 little sitting angels, that sit on an edge of something.
Okay, yeah.
And one of these sitting angels flew off of the stairs.
Now, when you say flew,
it launched, because it had to go several feet in the air,
right? Yeah.
And then hit the floor and rolled to the floor to my feet, stopped at my feet. Didn't break it either. It was just one of those ceramic things.
Yeah. Debbie, I lost you for your audio for a second here.
Oh, I hit the fart button.
There we go.
Sorry. I said, oh my God, it's my mom.
You just said that on the air. I love it.
So sorry. But anyway, I was so excited, and my grief went to elation, because she did what she told me. We had this specific conversation. Now, my brothers and sister, or my sisters and my brother, I don't think any of them have had anything like that. And I'm sure they would have liked to have had it. And I know other people that I would have liked to have had it with other friends of mine that I've lost. But I think it's because my mom and I, of course, my mom, you're a part of them. And we had this specific conversation where we were going to do this.
Right. I think that's very helpful. And I do wonder if couples or family members, had that conversation with each other, like, hey, send me a sign. What about if you agree on a sign? Do you think it's possible to say, hey, send a butterfly or what have you?
Well, I don't know. I suppose it's possible. I just told my mom, do whatever you can, because I don't know what you're allowed to do.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Don't put limits on this. Yeah.
No, if I tell you to do this and then they say, no, you can't do that, but you could have done this, Now I'm not going to screw that up. So just do what you can.
All right. All right. We're going to open up the phone lines for everyone. If you want to call in and ask Debbie Jordan-Kauble your question, that is 855-472-5483 for the Paranormal Radio app line. That's 85-KGRA live. Lines are open. Call in, ask your questions. All right. So, Deb, I'm going to try this audio here again and see if we can get this worked out. Can you hear it? Could you hear it? Nope.
I didn't hear it.
All right. If we get some feedback in the comments section, that would be super helpful to let us know if you hear this audio. Okay. Anyone hear that audio? No? Okay, darn. All right. We're going to have to skip that. Well, that's all right. So, did you have any interest in the paranormal before your own personal experiences? If we can categorize Close Encounters of the Third Kind as paranormal.
Well, I wouldn't say so much interest as I would that we just had it happen in our lives. I mean, we had weird stuff happen when I was growing up as a kid. And, I took it as normal. I mean, I remember one time my sister and my mom and I were all, sitting at the kitchen table, and there was a great big amber glass ashtray, one of the big, thick, heavy ones that you can't even find anymore. We all smoked at the time. And I remember, reaching over to flip my cigarette, boop, like that. Just flick my ash off. Didn't even touch it. And as soon as I did that, the ashtray split in half with a huge loud thump. And one end slid to one side of the table and one end slid to the other, and all the butts and everything set. They're right in the middle. And here's the three reactions from three different people. My first mom's reaction was, damn, that was an expensive ashtray. And I was like, oh man, that's cool. Did I do that?
Right.
And my sister Kathy is like, okay, I'm going home. Bye. And she got up and left. So
sometimes the practical matters are much more important.
Well, mom got used. We got used to stuff like that. She was sitting downstairs in this tri-level. This downstairs basement had half of the wall was brick and half was glass mirror. And they had two funky 70s swag lamps on either side. And they were on, and mom was sitting there on her couch watching her stories. That's what she called them. She was watching her stories. Mm-hmm. And she got up to do something, and she heard a pop. And then she heard sprinkles, the sound of sprinkling glass. And she looked up. The light bulb in one of those swag lamps hanging over there by that mirror popped, but the glass dropped down below the swag, the opening, and then shot across the room and sprinkled all over where she had just gotten up off the couch. My mom, I told you, she'd never scared of anything. She was like, oh hell, now I got to clean that mess up.
And shouldn't that be the way the world is, right?
My mom was not scared of anything. She, and she had her own weird experiences when she was a kid too. So
I'm not one that necessarily goes looking for these kinds of experiences. I love chatting about them. And I think there's always that fear that you might accidentally bring some negative energy or spirit home. So that's one thing that is very important to me to not do. We have our first caller, Ronald from Minnesota. You are on the air.
Hi, Alan. Good to hear you again this weekend. Another great guest. Thank you for the show, and thank you for the call-in lines. Thank you, Bill, for taking my call. I have a few questions. Well, maybe one major question about the paranormal and seeing UFOs. I live in Southwest Minnesota. We always call it the postage stamp. It's just a square, basically, in the middle of nowhere. But I have not heard or seen any UFOs except one that I might have seen on film, which I couldn't really explain if it was UFO or not, but I didn't think anything of it. And nothing else. I've had more paranormal experiences in my house and on the road and things like that. One of the last ones that I've had was, Alan, have you ever seen something where you're looking at something in normal vision? You see a regular, I don't know if you call it 3D or 2D, normal vision when you see something,
Mm-hmm.
Nothing weird. I'm looking at these horses on my way coming back from town, which is a 30-minute drive, in the middle of cow pastures, cornfield, whatever. Horses are out there. Then some of the horses look normal. One white horse looks like a cardboard cutout. But it was like the other horses. But in my vision, I saw it as a flat cardboard horse. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I know that dimensions, if we're speaking in terms of multiple dimensions, there could be a 2D reality.
That's what I was going with, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've had on my drive, that same drive, going on up Highway 4, 2-lane road, cornfields and cow pastures on either side, nothing there. I've seen cars coming down, nowhere to turn, and they disappear. I've had that happen twice that I know of, maybe more, but I know of twice that has happened. Disappearing cars. I've heard of it. I've seen stories on YouTube, not made up. This is actual experiences that people had.
I've heard that.
Ron, do you have a question for Debbie?
Yeah. So how do you make all this work in your own mind as far as what's reality, what's, and are you any kind of a spiritual person? Like, are you religious, or does this have anything to do with your experiences?
I'm not religious, but I am spiritual.
Okay.
And I think there's good things in every organized religion for somebody, but it's just so my mom was a Pentecost and my dad was a Catholic. When they got married, they both got, their churches weren't really happy about it, I guess. But they let us they gave us the basics of Christianity and then let us find for ourselves. And I'm spiritual. And I try to remain focused and grounded I do my best to try to find the prosaic answer to everything. I always look for what it could be. And I base my thoughts on what they could tell me what it wasn't, but they couldn't tell me what it was. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So, and I focus on my family, my kids. I try to keep my feet on the ground, and I journal a lot. I write a lot of things down. I write everything down when it's weird, and I'll go back and I'll reread it, many times. And sometimes I can figure it out on my own, and it turns out to not be what I thought it was. So I'm always actively trying to stay sane in this crazy world.
I like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for calling in, Ron.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Yep. And thank you, Bill, for the call, and great guest again. Have a good night.
All right.
You too. Thanks.
Good night, Ron. Yeah. So, I guess that kind of reminds me of the whole different realities bumping up against each other. Do you think that if we're from a different dimension, can we even walk around in another reality? Is that even possible?
I don't know. I had an experience one time with someone that I had previously met on a bus, and then I had a dream about him. And in this dream, this was so cool. I mean, I found out later that I was dreaming about him and he had passed away, and I didn't even know that he had passed away, but he'd come to me in this dream. And he said, "Take my hand. I want to take you somewhere." I'm like, okay, because I was like, loved this guy. I would have gone anywhere with him. So I took his hand, and as soon as I took his hand, everything went black. I mean, I could still feel his hand in mine, but I could no longer see. I mean, the blackest of black. I couldn't even see my own hand. Okay. And I could hear his voice. He said, "Hold on tight." And he was right next to me. So I could hear him, but I couldn't see him. And then all of a sudden, he was talking to me, but he was really far. He sounded really far, far away, but I was still holding his hand. And I felt flat. I didn't know any other way to say it to him, but I felt, oh my God, I can't breathe. I'm flat. I'm flat. And I said, Para, I'm flat. I can't breathe. I don't know how I could even say it because I couldn't breathe, but I was saying, I feel flat.
Okay.
And I hear him and he sounds way far away, like he's in another room, but I'm still feel his hand in mine. And he says, oh shit, you can't come yet. You're not ready. And as soon as he let go of my hand, I woke up. Now what the hell? Who has dreams like that? That was crazy. And I wrote it down. But it sounds like somebody came to take me somewhere else and realized I couldn't go. And then, like I said, later I found out he had passed away in 1985. And I was having these dreams about him in like 1987. And I didn't know that he had passed away. Wow. So did he come from somewhere else and try to take me somewhere?
Yeah.
But I couldn't go because I ain't dead yet, or what, And then I had a near-death experience.
That's fascinating. Yeah, like reaching through reality and trying to pull you through.
And like I said, the weirdest part was I could feel his hand in mine, but his voice sounded like he was in another room. Yeah. And the only way I could think to describe how I was feeling was that I felt flat.
I have a question from Neutron, and that is, in any of your abductions, did they ever induce you into an out-of-body experience at the location of said abduction?
Yeah, I saw that earlier. Now, you know what? I don't, possibly, some of my memories or dreams or whatever you want to call them were kind of weird, and I would be like in one place and then all of a sudden I'm somewhere else and then all of a sudden I'm back to that place. Did I leave physically or did I go astrally? I don't know for sure. Okay. In some of those instances. So that's possible,
Yeah. Now with Bud Hopkins, was he the only mainstream, if you will, ufological researcher that you worked with?
No, actually, in the early on, my mother and I, after we started being in contact with Bud, he tried to get MUFON to work with us locally, but they weren't interested in any abductions at the time. They are potentially, that was just too weird for them. They were nuts and bolts still, and they weren't really interested. So he got a hold of a guy named J. Allen Hynek at the Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, and Dr. Hynek talked to us on the phone several times. We had Mom and I had witnessed something together back in October, about a year later, a big black triangle that went over the house and had some spectacular light panels on it. It was very low, real loud, real low, silent. I mean, I was sure we would see stuff all over the news. This thing, oh my God, people everywhere are going to see this thing is huge. Nothing. So Dr. Hynek, we drew pictures for him, which I still have these old pictures. Yeah. We sent him letters. We talked to him on the phone many times. And he told my mother, not too long before he passed away, he told my mother that he had come to the conclusion in some cases that you could put 10 people in a field and have an event happen, but only 5 of them would see it. Because he felt like not everybody was meant to see these. If you're meant to see these for whatever reason, you will.
So like some people's mind is cloaked somehow?
Or something is wired differently in us, or the wiring has changed, or something is different about our ability to see and sense these things and other people can't. I don't know why, but I mean, this is what Dr. Hynek said. This is what he told my mother, that he thought not everybody was meant to see it or was able to see it. Right. Yeah. Because my mom and I were like, why the hell didn't the whole city of Indianapolis be all over TV and radio seeing this huge black triangle with this red circle in the bottom and these white bars of lights on the edge that when they got over the house and turned on, you could literally hear it go boom when it turned on and then it turned off,
I have a question from Anonymous. Why your home, your family? How about the next door neighbors? Did they have a close encounter? Did they witness the UFO?
Yes. In '83, when Bud came and talked to the neighbors later, Some of the neighbors down the street had actually witnessed other strange nights that we didn't even know about. Right. A neighbor across the street and a neighbor directly next to us, both on or about that night. The lady right next to us reported a bright red flash of light coming from the direction of Mom and Dad's backyard that shook her whole house and cut her power off and turned her television set red. And when her husband came home from work that night, she was hiding behind the couch thinking someone was coming to get her. The other lady across the street, Bud found out, was a nurse, worked third shift at the hospital, and was getting ready to get up. And she said she was awoke by the sound of what sounded to her like an airplane jet about to crash into her house. And the whole house shook, and the lights went up, the power flickered. And the weird thing about her report was what she told Bud was all of the clocks in the front half of her house, which would be the house closest to my parents, stopped at a certain time. The clocks at the back of the house continued to run, but all of her clocks, what is that?
Bizarre.
That is the bizarrest crap I've ever. Yes. So yeah, it wasn't just Mom and I. It was some of the neighbors, as it turns out.
So I guess could it have been just proximity to whatever this craft was?
Possibly. And then like 20 years later, somebody wrote Bud a letter. And it turns out this woman lived at the street behind Mom and Dad's house, which was separated by a small wooded area, and that she reported that on or about the same time of this experience, her young boys and their friends were sleeping in the garage out there at the house one night, which the opening of the garage faced the wooded area where behind my mom's house. They come running in, screaming, having a fit because they said that the woods was full of balls of light, like basketball-sized balls of light floating through the woods. And the boys were so terrified, she wrote in this letter to Bud, the boys were so terrified that they wouldn't go back out in the garage. And they never went back out there and slept again after that. She said her and her husband went out there and looked around and they didn't see anything. But these boys insisted that they saw these balls of light meandering through this small wooded area between my mom and dad's house. And it was on or about that same date and time.
I have another question from Anonymous. Do you think that your abductions are multi-generational? What advice would you give to your child if they shared a similar experience?
Yes, I do, because my mom had strange experiences, which we didn't know about till Bud started talking to her. And then my children have had strange experiences when they were little. They don't talk about it now. Especially my oldest son doesn't want to talk about it at all. Okay. My younger son, he will talk about it, and has weird stuff happen to him now, but it's more. It seems to me like it's more paranormal-ish rather than UFO-ish, if you want to divide that in. And then, my granddaughter had a time when she was 5 or 6 years old for about 6 months when she told her dad that the aliens were trying to get in her bedroom window to take her.
Are there hybrid children out there that you feel that you've lost that are yours?
Well, I feel that, I had that one pregnancy. I always felt that was a girl, and, obviously she was mine, but I always felt like she was my husband's boyfriend's at the time. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure what to think about that. And I've had other dreams with seeing other babies, they looked human though, to me.
Okay. And how would you process it well, do you think, if in fact you were, abducted again and shown your hybrid child, if there was one? Because that's another report that we hear often.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, she would be like 43 years old. So it wouldn't be like I'd be seeing a child. I'm old, So I mean, and I have to admit, there's a little tiny part of me, as crazy as it may sound, that if there is this woman out there at this point that had something to do with, that I was her mother, that I would hope that, there's a drive in humans to find their mothers. My mom was an adoptee. My mom was adopted, adopted people seek out their birth mothers a lot. Hopefully, if there's a little piece of me in someone, they would seek me out eventually, before I died. I have that little hope at the back of my mind, although I got the rest of me saying, that's some craziness. Just shut up. Don't, because I got to live here. And it does sound crazy. And I don't know. I can't say definitively for sure. When someone says they know anything 100%, I got a red flag flying for everybody, because I'm trying to live a normal life here and navigate through this crazy shit. And I can't let myself go there and stay for very long, because it's not healthy.
No, it's not. Debbie, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I really do appreciate it. So
thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So what's next on your agenda as far as, your continuation of sharing your story? Your book is to come out soon. Anything else?
Oh, right now, thanks to COVID, no, not much. I mean, I'd be more than happy to do stuff like this. I'm now retired for the most part, and so I'll have a lot more time, which is good. I mean, it's kind of dovetail with my book coming out, so I can take more time to promote that. Yeah. And I just keep journaling and watching and doing my thing, and I want to get involved more in spreading the word, I guess, open. If I said one thing during this broadcast that was something somebody needed to hear, then I did what I came here to do. I feel the whole point of me going forward and coming in public, it was to, I feel like I have a destiny, a job, to open people's minds. Even if I don't ask anybody to believe anything I say, but just hear me and trust that, believe me, that if I hadn't experienced it, I would doubt it as well. So, I'm all on that. So just to understand, I just want people to realize the world is not what you think it is. And it's not, there's a way more to the world than what you see with your eyes. And I just think that the better prepared people are for it, the better the world's going to be. I just want the world to be a better place. I want humans to be better. I want people to be happy. I want the earth to be healthy. And, I'll do what I can to my part to do it. This is part of it for me.
All right. We'll leave it at that. Debbie, thank you so much again.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
All right. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. Thank you all for joining us tonight. That was a fantastic conversation with Debbie. If you want to find out more about her story, look for her new book, the expanded edition of Abducted, the story of the Intruders Continues. That'll be coming out soon. We deal with abductions and the emotional management of what happens to people after they've had abductions. And, I have to say that Debbie is certainly not only one of the most believable people out there, but from what I can tell, pretty well balanced. And, and I appreciate that straightforward, honest talk. And to be honest with us about, what aspects of her experience is real, that she's sure of, and aspects that she's not so sure of. It's very important for us to try to keep that little bit of a skeptic, I think, inside us, because it's easy to get really lost in some of the more fantastical side of all of these strange phenomena that we cover. So yes, I'm a believer, and I assume that you probably are too if you're listening. But let's have like a little bit of healthy skepticism, just so that we don't lose our way. Because I've found that when I'm having conversations with people who are kind of on the edge of believing or don't believe at all, they listen more, I think, when we're honest about not knowing all the answers and not assuming that we have all the answers to this strange phenomena. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all again for tuning into Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio, your official contact for the best in alternative talk radio. A special thanks to KGRA Head of Operations Eric Brager, and of course, our amazing producer, Bill Skywatcher. Until next time, live in the mystery.